Defining common resources. In the bottom left of the Presence Task Administrator, you will see the Resources Explorer. Resources are commonly used components of a Presence BPM system and include such things as database servers, FTP servers, SMTP servers, templates for text and HTML emails, scorecards for maintaining statistical data, and message transporters for integrating with other third-party messaging systems such as fax servers, SMS servers, etc. In this exercise we will define a database server, which will be the Presence internal database. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, which is an industry standard language used for querying a database. An SQL statement will be passed to your database and the database will give you the results you require. In order for you to submit an SQL statement to a database, you must first establish a connection to that database. This connection is done either via ODBC, Open Database Connectivity, or JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. ODBC is a Microsoft standard for Windows applications to connect to databases, and JDBC is the equivalent for Java applications. Since Presence is a Java application, it needs to connect to data sources via JDBC using a suitable driver. Therefore, in order to create an SQL statement, we must first define an ODBC or JDBC connection. These connections are often reused in many different Presence BPM tasks, so they are in fact shared resources. As such, shared resources are created within the Resources Explorer area as a database resource. To create a new database resource, you select the database icon in the Resources Explorer, which is here, and then right-click in the category where you wish the database resource to reside. In this case, I want to create the database within the Training category, so I right-click here. Create New Database Resource. You are then presented with the Manage Database Resources screen. In this screen, you can specify a name for the database resource, a driver class, and a connection URL. These values will differ from one database to another. Due to licensing restrictions and constant updates to JDBC drivers, we have only included a limited number of free JDBC drivers. These consist of the point-based JDBC driver, which is used for the Presence internal database, which we will mainly be using in these exercises, and the IBM DB2 AS400 JDBC driver. An ODBC connector is also installed. ODBC connections must be defined in the Windows control panel. In some cases, you will be required to manually load either an ODBC or JDBC driver provided by your database vendor in order to connect to your database. To use the Presence internal point-based driver, put your cursor in the driver class field and use the Control Space keys in combination. This should present you with a number of options. In this instance, we'll select this driver, and this defines the JDBC driver we will use in this instance. Now we need to select the connection URL. The connection URL defines the specific database server to which we will connect. The format for connection URLs varies from one database vendor to another. Where a JDBC driver has been provided as part of the Presence BPM product, we will provide assistance with the connection strings. Click the question mark button to display a suggestion for the connection URL. The connection URL suggestion dialog box will appear like this, showing you the likely syntax for the connection string. Click Yes to accept this. The suggested syntax will now appear in the connection URL field in the Manage Database Resources dialog box. You must edit this syntax to specify your Presence server name and database name. The database name for the internal Presence database will always be Presence. So let's do this now. The computer I'm working on here is called Telecels PC1, and as I just said, the Presence database is always Presence. You should have the database name included in URL checkbox already checked. Next, you need to verify that the parameters are all correct. So click the Test Connection button. In this dialog box, you're prompted to enter a username and password which is valid for the database connection. In this case, use the default Presence administration username and password, admin, and presadmin. Click OK. Success! Okay, so we've created a connection here. We can click OK, and there we are. There's our new database connection all set up and ready to be used in any task that you wish. Obviously, as you've just seen, if you were trying to connect to an Oracle or a SQL Server or an Informix database, for example, you must get a JDBC driver from your database vendor and find the correct syntax for the connection URL. This will usually be found on your database vendor's website. If you want to connect to an ODBC database, like a Microsoft Access database for example, you'll need to configure an ODBC data source within the Windows control panel. Often this involves installing some Windows client software from your database vendor. For example, to have an Access ODBC driver, you need to install Microsoft Office. That brings us to